Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. I'm Shiprothim and I teach yoga. In this video I'm going to talk to you guys about different types of siddhis. So why am I here talking about different kinds of siddhis? As I mentioned in the previous video, I would do a follow-up, and the follow-up being a talk about the different kinds of siddhis. So in the last video I talked to you guys about what siddhis or yogic powers or psychic abilities means. Now, siddhis and psychic abilities, when we are talking about these things, we're talking about fringe science. Things which according to science is on the fringe of things, okay? Not exactant and not proven. So I did mention in the previous video that if you want to believe in these things, then you have to experience them for yourself. And the only way you can experience these powers, if they do exist or not, is by employing certain techniques. There are many videos that talk about these powers, and the most common being the law of manifestation, the law of attraction, manifesting things into reality, right? Your desires, becoming a millionaire, having your soulmate, all of these things, these manifestations, or about foretelling the future. You want to know about your future partner, soulmate, about your career. All of these things seem to involve the use of psychic abilities. In other words, powers that are beyond calculations as accorded by scientific methods, okay? Now, I've done yoga for quite a while, okay? 15 years to be precise, 15 years of experience. I talked about this in my previous video that I did experience a few of these psychic abilities, phenomena is what I would call them, supernatural powers if you may. A lot of you people out there watching this video, and some of you who aren't, you're obviously, maybe you did experience these abilities and maybe you didn't. And for some of you who did experience them, and if you think you know what you're talking about, if you think you know better than me, leave your comment down below. But in this video, I'm not going to go all Sanskrit on you guys. I'm not going to talk about Anima, Laghima, Garima, and all of these various Sanskrit-based siddhis, right? Like the ones you find in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in chapter 3, which is Vibhuti Pad. Vibhuti means power and Pad means part. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. Look it up yourself. It's available. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, written by and commented upon by B.K.'s Iyengar, is something I would suggest. Now, I am going to talk about the different types of siddhis from a very modern point of view, where I feel you guys can somewhat connect with these powers, okay, of the mind. Siddhis are not just powers that take place at a physical or a mental level, okay? I mentioned in a post that we're made up of 7 layers of being, and in yoga as well, it's considered that the human being is made up of 7 sheets or 7 layers, okay? They're called koshas. These siddhis, okay, they manifest according to the koshas, okay? And according to the koshas, as in they manifest at a physical level, so there are siddhis at a physical plane, there are siddhis that manifest at a mental plane, then at an intellectual level, at an emotional level, at a spiritual level, and at a supernormal level, okay? Something which just cannot be conceived of. So, now siddhis are also called accomplishments. The word siddh, okay, means accomplishment. Something that you have achieved, something that has been achieved. So when you practice yoga or any kind of spiritual practice, right, even if it's a physical practice or if it's a mental practice, when you attain a certain level of perfection or proficiency, you're said to have achieved something quite remarkable, a siddhi. Usain Bolt has the siddhi of running. He's achieved the zenith of perfection in terms of being a sprinter, okay? Valentino Rossi in terms of bike riding. Kim Kardashian as a social media personality, she has the siddhi of social media. You could put it in that way. She just has this thing about her that makes her perfect when it comes to social media. Okay, it's given her this accomplishment in the realm of social media. And you know, siddhis can just go on and on. Actors are said to have the siddhi of acting. Fortune tellers, the siddhi of fortune telling. Now, in general, these are the various types of siddhis. It's not rocket science. You guys can figure it out. I've just given you a general idea of what types of siddhis at this level means. According to the yoga scriptures and according to ancient scriptures, although siddhis are typified and categorized in a different way, it isn't so generic, it isn't so general. They talk about things like anima, okay, the ability to become as small as an atom, whatever that means to you. I know what it means. It has various connotations, it has various meanings, and I'm not going to talk about it in this video. I'm not going to go all Sanskrit on you. Okay, I'm trying to be modern, and I'm trying to give it to you guys in a very simple way. I'm going to start off with the type of siddhi that manifests at a physical level. Now, when you're into a physical practice or when you're into a yogic practice, a spiritual practice, certain accomplishments accompany your practice along the way. One of them in Sanskrit is called Kaya Siddhi. Kaya means body, okay? Or Kaya Siddhi. What does this mean? This means perfection of the physical form. After continuous practice of yoga, after a determined practice of yoga or asanas or any, like I said, just doesn't have to be just yoga, it could be anything. You just being into fitness, okay? You gain a siddhi of physical perfection. You look beautiful, right? Or you look very handsome. You start to look very handsome or very beautiful. But beyond these, beyond the superficiality and beyond these, you exhibit certain traits of physical health that can be clearly seen through your aura. People who can read your aura will immediately tell you that, well, you're very healthy. You know, they can just tell you that. You exuberate this energy of vitality, okay? That is the other siddhi associated with Kaya Siddhi or physical siddhi, physical perfection. According to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in chapter 3, Vibhuti Pad, he says that upon continuous practice and mastery of asanas, the body becomes as firm and as brilliant as a diamond, which means your muscles, your bones, and all of these vital organs are augmented in such a way that you become perfect. The tone and the structure, the shine and the radiance of vitality, is all at a peak, okay? And it makes you a very attractive person. So the siddhi of attractiveness also accompanies this Kaya Siddhi, okay? There's a certain clearness of continence skin, okay? There's a certain beautifying effect accompanied by the physical siddhi, Kaya Siddhi. And at a physical level, you get rid of any kind of diseases, physical discomforts, okay? You lose consciousness of your health, consciousness of your body. And why is this important? This is important because if you're always stuck to the physical plane, if you're always bothered about how bad you feel today or how sick you are not going to be able to make any kind of progress on the path of spirituality or even in the material realm, okay? So when you have all of these physical perfections, it's called Kaya Siddhi, okay? And there are a sect of yogis, the Rasayanas, okay, who have been able to really push the limits in terms of Kaya Siddhi. What they've been able to do is that they've been able to come up with certain preparation, medicinal preparations that has effectively rendered their bodies immortal. I myself don't believe in this, but it's actually been written and documented in certain scriptures, okay? And it's been talked about a lot, the Rasayanas, okay? The Rasayanas, because Ras means something that's tasted, liquid, okay? Juice juice-like. In other words, meaning something that has to be ingested, okay? Medicinal herbs, these people came up with combinations of mercury and sulfur that made them immortal, to the point that their students today who claim, that they are the students of such great yogis, they claim that their masters are still alive, okay? This is another form of physical perfection, Kaya Siddhi, okay, which is not just made or not just accomplished through physical effort, but is also accompanied through ingesting certain substances. Obviously, in the world of gymming and fitness, we know how important it is in order to reach a certain state of physical perfection, of perfection of physique, to concentrate a lot on the type and the kind of food that you're having. Nutritional science has come upon certain supplements and ingredients that enhances the way you look, the way you feel, vitamins and all kinds of other supplements to put on muscle, to allow your body to be shaped in a certain way. Science is slowly unraveling the secrets of these siddhis at a physical level and at other levels. But I'm here to talk about siddhis and how they were already being spoken about way back in the past. Now, that's your physical siddhi at a physical level. Let's move on to siddhis that manifest at a mental level. So what are the siddhis that manifest at a mental level? You know, there are some people who can really concentrate for extended periods of time. It seems like they can never get exhausted of doing a certain mental activity. They're able to just keep their focus on something and they're so good at it, while others get distracted every now and then. They're just not able to just focus on one object. They're constantly on the move. People who are able to ponder over a certain subject or a topic for an extended period of time without allowing any kind of external or internal interruption to affect this train of thought. These kind of people are said to manifest a certain kind of mental siddhi or mental accomplishment, mental power. This mental power allows them to use their minds more than other people are able to. Einstein has said that we're just using 5% of what our minds are actually capable of. 95% is not being used. Now, given what I've just said, using that 5%, ordinary people are able to just get by their work with a lot of effort, right? But people who have stumbled upon this mental siddhi, the siddhi of the mind, okay, and unlocking its hidden potential, these people are able to go beyond that 5% and are able to come up with astounding innovations in science and technology and in other areas of human activity when it comes to the mind, when it comes to art. Some people they seem to be blessed with this innate ability to imagine things that no ordinary person can or could. This is the siddhi of the mind. The other thing accompanied with the siddhi of the mind is, it's said that the mind is like a magnet. It attracts things, circumstances and people towards a person. When your mind is very powerful, and when you think about people who talk about the law of manifestation and law of attraction, think about what they're talking about. They are using words and terms like law of manifestation, bringing something manifest, okay, into manifest reality. The law of attracting, getting things and circumstances attracted to you. And science has showed, okay, medical science to some extent has proven that this body of ours is a magnet or has magnetic properties. Of course, science will just go further someday and find out that, well, the law of manifestation and attraction actually has some scientific basis, maybe not at the moment, okay? But I'm trying to be grounded over here. I'm still uncertain. So when the mind becomes so magnetized, right, whether you perform certain breathing techniques or you practice law of attraction methods, techniques or exercises, law of manifestation exercises, your mind becomes like a magnet. When you want something, it just comes to you. When you want to be in a certain situation, you are. Whether it happens instantaneously or after a certain period of time, it is said that that depends on how powerful your mind is, or how, effectuous your practice has been, okay? Or how effective your practice has been. Those are the siddhis that you encounter at a mental level, okay? Those are mental siddhis. I'm going to dive deeper, and I'm going to go beyond siddhis manifesting at a mental level, and I'm also going to talk about things that can be classified as mental siddhis, such as clairvoyance, okay? Or the ability to also read into other people's minds and understand exactly what their true intentions are. Okay, this is a kind of mental achievement, because not a lot of people are able to do this. Only people who have been born with this specific psychic ability, or who have trained to develop these abilities, are said to have it. When you practice yoga or any other kind of spiritual practice, you sometimes may notice that you're able to just look at a person and understand who they are, or what type of a personality is it that they possess, or what is it that they're thinking about. And these come to you as intuitional flashes, or more specifically, more properly speaking, as flashes of insight, okay? Insight is very important when it comes to mental and intellectual siddhis, because the meaning of the term insight, as I explained in previous videos, means to have an inside view into things. Things that are not plain and not as clear as daylight. It could be that a person is sitting 20 kilometers from here and is thinking about the same thing that you're thinking about, right? And that person could do something on social media that reflected what you were thinking about. Now what's happening over here is a kind of telepathy. It's not really a mental siddhi, it's more of a natural occurrence. But let's say your friend is sitting 20 kilometers from here, okay, and you're just sort of like wondering, I wonder what he or she is thinking about, and you have this insight, this intuitional knowledge that they're doing this, okay? And if you give them a call and they tell you that, hey, hi, you know what, wow, that's funny that you called me up, I was just doing this work, and you're just sitting over there on the phone, but that's exactly what I thought you were doing. Wow, I was right. You didn't even have to tell me that, and I knew what you were doing. This is a siddhi of insight. It's a mental siddhi, okay? And this is what allows fortune tellers or people with psychic abilities to read into your future and tell you all kinds of fantastic things that later come to be true. I told you in my previous video that you have to be grounded, that out of 100 people, 99% tend to be charlatans, okay? And only 1% is the real deal. Mental siddhis includes the ability to read into other people's minds, to some extent telepathy. It also involves your ability to hear and understand events that are happening around the world, or with respect to a certain situation or a thing, without the use of any kind of preconceived knowledge. So when you're thinking about, say, you want to know what's happening in a certain company, just for the heck of it, randomly, I want to know how this company operates. And if you happen to be walking and you look at the company, and just by staring at the name, you get the whole download of what kind of departments exist in this company, or how they operate. It's this very intuitional download that you get, and you just somehow know how it functions, and nobody has to explain to you how the company works. This is another kind of mental siddhi. This is another kind of mental insight that breaks all boundaries of what's considered to be normal. Whenever we are talking about siddhis, we're talking about things that are not necessarily within, what occurs normally in terms of normal phenomena. But science is soon going to break those boundaries, and it's going to tell you that, well, these are all just scientific. There's nothing extraordinary about these things. Anyhow, now let's move on to emotional siddhis. Siddhis that manifest at an emotional level. Again, remember, siddhis means accomplishment. Siddhi, when it comes to yoga and spirituality, means your ability to conquer some kind of deficiency or affliction, and by virtue of conquering these afflictions, having accomplished this achievement, you gain perfection, or you become achieved in this respect. Okay? So siddhas are beings, perfected beings, because they have siddhis, or accomplishments, or they have conquered many things that ordinary people have not been able to. Very simple. When you find that at an emotional level you have conquered all kinds of emotional afflictions and imbalances, right? When you're more grounded as a person, when you're able to really contain your emotions so well that nothing can shake you emotionally, you are said to have achieved the siddhi of emotions. Okay, or at an emotional level you are perfected. So remember, I'm trying to explain these things to you guys without involving Sanskrit terminology. The way siddhis were understood back in those days, it was very different, and I don't think if I explained it to you the way they understood it back in those days would serve you. I think it would just confuse you guys, okay? So I'm just going to explain those things that, you know, were talked about in those days, but in a modern perspective. So the siddhi of friendliness in Vibhuti Pad, it is said that when you master the siddhi of friendliness, or when you master the sacral chakra, okay, when your sacral chakra is functioning at a very high level, you are said to gain the siddhi of friendliness. So when your sacral chakra is activated or is functioning at a very high level, it's said that any kind of violence around you, okay, any kind of emotional disturbance, or people who are emotionally disturbed, they calm down. All of that emotional turmoil seems to just fade away in the presence of people who have mastered the functioning of the sacral chakra. Okay? The functioning of the sacral chakra and its mastery gives you the siddhi of friendliness and non-violence. Now, not a lot of people know about this, but I'm telling you. So, when your sacral chakra is super activated, if a tiger and a cow, okay, the tiger's natural prey being a herbivore, if these two were in front of each other, facing each other, the tiger wouldn't attack it. And that's how powerful this siddhi of emotion is. Okay, it's a very crude way that I'm explaining to you guys, saying siddhi of emotion. Obviously there are Sanskrit terminologies, okay, but again, I'm not going to bog you down with this. Keeping it simple. If you go into an area of, let's say you go into a neighborhood where there are these, you know, where there's a lot of gang-related violence, and if you really are an accomplished yogi or a spiritual person, right? Or just in general, you just are a person who's really nice, or who's just naturally mastered the sacral chakra or the siddhi of friendliness, these people will not act violently towards you. They just won't. Okay, and this again goes to reflect how the law of manifestation and attraction actually kind of works. You know, it's said that you have to be a vibrational match. So what happens is that when you're vibrating at such a peaceful level, right, and you go in front of these people who are vibrating very aggressively, their vibrations get cancelled out because of your gentleness, okay? And so when they come in your presence, they kind of feel peace. And this is the reason why a lot of people go to spiritual gurus or priests, you know, to feel that peace. They feel the peace of God, so to speak. Emotions and peace are interconnected. Emotions and the sacral chakra are interconnected. The siddhi of emotions. The siddhis that manifest at an emotional level is what I'm talking about. The other thing associated at the emotional level is your ability to look into a person and immediately tell what emotional state they are vibrating at. I know a lot of people can do this at a very superficial level, right? You can tell when a person is happy or sad. No. But sometimes people, even if they're not in front of you, let's say it's a relative, and they're far away from you in another country, right? And if that relative is terribly depressed or is in danger, even if you're sitting thousands of miles away, you sense it. You sense that emotional state. But how is that even possible? And you call them up and you tell them that, hey, is everything okay? I sensed that, you know, there's something off about you, and I thought maybe I should call and check up if everything's okay. And they actually confirm that whatever you said, your suspicions actually are true. How's it possible? You know, a lot of times these have actually happened and there are no real explanations for these things, but they're actually naturally occurring phenomena, but these are just very fine expressions of the tremendous potential of human consciousness. And yoga practices, spiritual practices, general human development brings it out. Who would have thought 2,000 years before about such a fabulous invention like the Android phone? I mean, people back then would just lose their minds. You know, if I had taken an Android phone back over there and be like, hey, look, this thing can do this, they would be like, magician, put him to the stake, burn him, he's a witch, you know? So back in those days, people who had siddhis, right, they had to keep it all a secret because people weren't able to comprehend that these things are actually normal. You can read the emotions of people, and there's always going to be some kind of benefit in knowing, you know, what a person is feeling, so that you can behave or act towards a certain person or certain groups of people, so that you don't get into antagonism with their beliefs, but you're able to accord with them. And if you have to put out something that is in disagreement with them, you're able to do it in such a way that keeps their emotions stable, that doesn't ruffle up their emotions, okay? This is another kind of siddhi of emotions, and politicians possess this siddhi. They know how emotions of people function, and so they're able to tamper around with them using various devices, whether it's through broadcast media, whether it's, you know, how it works to some extent. And they're able to tell people certain things, or tell certain groups of people certain things that brings up certain emotions towards that subject, and eventually they end up voting for the person because that person has been able to connect with that emotion that is most important to that group of people. Siddhi of emotions. Now let's move on to intellectual siddhis. Fairly obvious what an intellectual siddhi would be. Your ability to calculate, your ability to use logic to the point where it's almost perfect. And there are mathematicians and scientists who are incredibly talented at this. You know, there are prodigies who you give them like this big number, right? And it goes into trillions. And you tell them that, okay, break down the equation and give me the square root of this number, which is a gigantic number. And they just they intuit it. They use insight and they go like, that is the answer. And later on, the mathematician, the other person, the scientist, works it out and, you know, does the calculation and is like, well, the person is correct. I don't know how he did it. There's no possible way to explain it, but the logic is there. The answer is correct. We don't know how this person has bypassed the logical sequence, but has come to the conclusion. This is the siddhi of the intellect. Because when you have the siddhi of intellect, your mind, at an intellectual level, becomes so sharp and so fast that it doesn't need to go through the logical sequence of calculating every single factor. It just arrives at a conclusion and it's correct. Many great spies and detectives have this siddhi of the intellect. So they're able to solve crimes and, you know, all kinds of riddles fairly easily. Okay, and there are even people who solve the Rubik's Cube in this way, because either they are born with the siddhi or, you know, they've trained so much that they have accomplished themselves in this area. So obviously when we're talking about siddhis, it's not something that just is given to you until and unless it's said that you've practiced it in a previous birth. Otherwise you have to put in some kind of practice to gain this accomplishment. Now don't always think that doing yoga is the only way to get these siddhis, because there are many people who don't do yoga, right? Your classical form of yoga, the asanas and pranayama and all of these things, but they have these siddhis. You have to understand something, that yoga was a science that looked very deeply into the human condition. okay? And so it's just obvious that they had to talk about the human consciousness and its potential, okay? Now, nowadays, people, you know, somehow yoga got lost, but that's for another video altogether. I'm going to tell you about why yoga was lost and how it came back into being. A lot of people practice yoga unconsciously. Yoga is just a way of, you know, terming something. You know, we're always meditating. When you're trying to program something, okay, well, like very top level software engineers, the object of their focus or of their perception, the agent of perception, okay, the agents of perception in plural, okay, all of these become one, a union, yog. Yog is what happens, okay? But science does not recognize this process as yog, even though it is. They simply call it concentration. They simply call it being focused, okay? So these siddhis over here, whether it's at an intellectual level, emotional, mental or spiritual level, they are all activated through concentration. And I even talked to you guys about this in the previous video, that it is also activated through certain incantations, chanting, certain kinds of herbs, you know, all those things that I explained to you guys about in the previous video. But, you know, I'm moving quickly because I want to tell you guys that at the helm of it all, you know, at the end, what you want is super consciousness. The method does not really matter to that extent. If you want to hear it from me, the most efficient and effective method is through concentration, super concentration, okay? So when people like Albert Einstein come up with this theory of relativity, it's not like they've been thinking about, it's not like he had been thinking about it like for a day and boom, it just comes into being and he's like, E is equal to mc squared. No, he had been concentrating on everything related to physics and relativity for many years, okay? And in one day, in a flash of an insight, he recognized that equation and he worked it out, okay? But all of this required him to meditate upon the subject for a long time. And this is a kind of intellectual siddhi. It's an accomplishment at an intellectual level. It's an achievement, okay? Now, hearing me, obviously, a lot of you might have a bit of a change in how you conceive or recognize this term psychic ability or vibhuti or yogic powers and supernormal abilities and all of these things, okay? It's really a science. Intellectual siddhis. Now let's move on to another kind of siddhi, which is quite phenomenal. It can never be proven. We don't know. Okay, it's always uncertain. Jesus walking on water. We don't know if it's true or not. Some yogic Himalayan yogi, you know, walking across the Himalayas and then vanishing. You know, as reported by some soldiers. You know, we don't know if it's true or not. It's fantastic. Certain legends about people who are able to open locks just by concentrating and then it just opens, you know, sort of like a kinetic kind of ability, using kineticism, the ability to move objects using only your mind, okay? These things are proper fringe science. It's proper paranormal stuff, you know, like people who are able to speak to deceased people, you know, mediums. These are things that just, it's almost like murky waters, you know, it's something that you really can't explain quite smoothly, just to put it in a way. These things, these supernormal abilities, these people just vanishing from one place and appearing in another, you know, these quantum jumps, all of these things are so out of this world. How do you explain them? I don't know. But in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in chapter 3, there have been records of saints and yogis achieving such phenomenal abilities, such as being able to leave their body and enter into another person's body. And they're said to do this because they've mastered a vital air called Uddan Vayu. Vayu means air, Uddan means something that flies off or to lift. Uddan Vayu is a vital air. Vital air because there are 5 types when it comes to yoga that keeps the body alive. And when the body dies, these airs, Vayus, they leave the body, okay? One of the Vayus is what causes the body to bloat up after dying. It's called Devdatta. And the other one is the Uddan Vayu, which allows the yogi, or even a person who has not been practicing yoga and just by chance stumbles upon the functioning of Uddan Vayu, to be able to gain full control over the functioning of the thoracic cavity, which encloses the heart and the lungs and the brain, to some extent, life force, the seat of the soul. So what happens is that these people gain such power and accomplishment over this Uddan Vayu that they were able to consciously leave their bodies, travel without a body, videhi, okay, videha, without a body, okay, videha as demigods to some extent, and walk, right, or even enter into another person's body, and enter into even dead bodies. There are actually accounts of these in various legends, and even in chapter 3 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And that is what happens when you get control over the Uddan Vayu, okay? Uddan Vayu controls the throat chakra as well. So your ability to control life force just breaks through the roof, okay? You're able to leave your body, something absolutely unimaginable. You gain the siddhi of life. You're able to leave body or die at will, ichha mrityu. Okay, unbelievable stuff. But, you know, in Indian folklore and in Indian yogic tradition, these things are considered to be quite true. If you get the time, and once this pandemic is over, if you get some time to go over to India, to Haridwar, Varanasi, and when the Kumbh Mela happens, it's a religious festival, you see all these Naga Babas, these Aghori, these sadhus, and you talk to people in general, you get an idea of what people are into or what their beliefs are. India is a place which is filled with spiritual ideas and legends and folklore. Whereas if you go more to the West, it's the opposite. There's not a lot of spirituality. There's more of a more social way of life. You know, it's more externalized. Okay, it's different. There's more emphasis on technology and the material world. The siddhis that I'm talking to you about, the supernormal siddhis, these are things that Indians really take seriously, especially the traditional ones. Okay, so they believe that their deceased ancestors are still there and they're able to hear you or hear them or their prayers. So this is just to give you a breakdown on the types of siddhis, right? And so there are these cases where the ancestor comes down and talks to the child, and the child is able to tell the parents about this deceased ancestor, and the parents are shocked because the child gives information about the ancestor being this tall or looking like this, or from this place, or said that that object is kept over there. And this happens in Indian villages. It's quite astonishing. Supernormal. Now, moving on to the last type of siddhi is spiritual siddhi. So what do I mean by spiritual siddhi? Spiritually being spiritually accomplished, right? It's as simple as that. When you are spiritually accomplished, you are solidified and you are completely certain about the fact that you are not this body and you are not the mind. That there is an entity that is using these things as a tool, as an instrument of its expression. That your pure energy and pure energy of consciousness, okay? Not just physical energy. It's very difficult to explain spiritual things from a materialistic point of view. So when you have a spiritual siddhi, right, the siddhi of spirituality, you become an incredibly accomplished spiritual person, whether you're practicing yoga or not. You're able to understand spiritual concepts so deep and so profoundly that you don't need to do any kind of yoga Or if you have been doing yoga, you reach this state of perfection spiritually that you don't need to do any more yoga or any more spiritual practice, okay? Spiritual siddhi also means that you become a saint, okay? You gain complete power over all the lower siddhis at the physical realm, at the mental realm, at the emotional realm, at the intellectual realm, and you know, just in general. You get full control of all the siddhis, but you remain detached, because all of these other siddhis that I spoke to you about is at a material level. When you are at a spiritual level, these siddhis don't matter to you, because if they did, you would lose out on the spiritual siddhi. And it's a very fine line that you have to tread when you come to this point where you have the spiritual siddhi, you have the material siddhi, and you have the spiritual siddhi staring down at you. It is over here that the yogi or the spiritual person or the practitioner or the, you know, just the person in general, whether practicing spirituality or not, is at a crossroad, you know. And over here is where the person determines whether they want to fall back into materialistic ignorance or the density of physical consciousness, or whether they want to progress into the higher realms of spiritual consciousness, okay? So, when they do make that jump, they lose all sense or all cognition of the material siddhis. They become established in the spiritual siddhi of being a spirit. And these are supremely advanced spiritual beings, okay? You don't always find them in ordinary society. This is the realm of saints, this is the realm of prophets, this is the realm of great spiritual gurus, okay? That's why when these gurus have to perform miracles, it takes a toll on their consciousness. You know, it leaves them, it renders them physically sick after a while. So, because it is at a conflict. There is the siddhi at the physical realm, at the material realm, okay? And there are the siddhis at a spiritual level, you know? Once you make that jump, you can't go back down here. Now, there are people who are stuck over here at an intermediate level. So they're able to sort of like beg and borrow a bit from here and there. Okay, it's a state of confusion. And in yoga, you know, there's it's where you either move forward to your spiritual practice or you fall from grace. That's why it's said that even though a person possesses these siddhis, and even if you know what kinds of siddhis there are, as I've spoken to you guys about, it's important to maintain an attitude of detachment so that you're able to observe them from a witness type consciousness, so that you don't get involved to the point that you lose yourself in the effects of these siddhis, because they can be quite dangerous if you're not grounded, okay? I'm not going to extend this video anymore. I hope I've given you enough of information on the types of siddhis in general, okay? Of course, you can look up the internet and you can go into some libraries and, you know, get the hard copies of certain books, which contains the actual documentation of these types of siddhis, okay, as it were, in Sanskrit. Do read chapter 3 of Vibhuti Pad as codified by Patanjali, okay, who wrote the Yoga Sutras. In addition to this, look into Shiv Samhita, which is an ancient treatise on yoga, okay? It's got all of the siddhis that I talked to you about, okay, and more. So you can read into that as well, okay? Now, I'm going to end this video over here, okay? And I hope I've given you some information about the types of siddhis. And of course, I did not go all Sanskrit on you guys because it's there for you guys to read and it would just confound you. When you're practicing yoga and when you come across these kinds of phenomena, okay, you need to be like a scientist. You need to segregate and compile your experiences and keep them for study. And always take care of yourself, because a lot of times what happens is that people tend to get ungrounded, okay? They tend to get imbalanced when it comes to siddhis, law of manifestation, law of attraction. They tend to lose their path. They tend to understand it in a way that the masters have in a way that is actually quite different. Okay, they tend to misunderstand the teachings. So always study and analyze, all right? And I'm going to leave this video at this, okay? Thank you so much for watching. Join me in the next video, all right? Subscribe to this channel if you do like this channel, of course. Like this video, hit that notification bell, and goodbye for now.